All right. Welcome to Sideboard MTG. My name's Eric, and I'm bringing you the latest version of Black-White Vampires here in Rivals of Ixalan. I hope you enjoy the video, and if you do, give it a thumbs up. And if you like the content in general, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Also, if you would like to play this deck or any other, use the link in the description box to sign up for Manatraders for rentals. If you sign up, use the Sideboard MTG 15 promo code to save yourself 15% off for the first 4 months of your subscription. So, I bring you Black-White Vampires, and yes, there's a couple other versions of this deck floating around, and all of them kind of hinge on like a 3-card change. And I guess I'll just go ahead and jump into those 3 cards. Here we have 2 Dusk, Champion of Dusk and 1 Sanctum Seeker. Now, these are kind of the 3 cards that people are kind of trading in and out. Most decks are running at least 1 copy of Champion of Dusk. However, the other 2 cards are either Crested Sunmares, and I was very tempted to run the Crested Sunmare deck. And if you want to see that, Frank Lepore did a video with the Crested Sunmare version of this deck that is almost card for card this deck. Now, I personally got this from someone who was playing it on the GP or the PPTQ level here in Phoenix, Arizona, and he had made a couple changes to it, and I've made 1 or 2 changes myself. And the big change he had made was he had started running the Champions of Dusk over the Crested Sunmare. I kind of like the idea. I really like drawing cards, and Crested Sunmare, even though that it is a must answer, does not have Vraska's Contempt, and that is kind of a thing. So they can get you before you exit your second main phase, and at that point you will lose your Crested Sunmare and you will not get your horse. So at least when this enters the battlefield, you'll get to draw some extra cards and continue with your go wide strategy. Now, since this is a go wide strategy, I personally wanted at least 1 copy of Sanctum Seeker. Also, I really wanted to be in the vampire theme because I am trying to bring the most competitive versions of the tribal decks once again here in Rivals of Ixalan. Now that the meta's settled a lot, there have been some changes, and I do believe this is the most competitive version of vampires that you will find. Now, again, these 3 cards, you can trade those in and out at your will. If you wanted to run 3 Champions of Dusk here, I don't think anyone would get upset at you. If you wanted to run a couple Crested Sunmares in here, you know, that has been done as well. And even Sanctum Seeker, just an absolute bomb of a card, especially when you've went wide with cards like Call to the Feast. Now, Call to the Feast is a 4-mana card, but it gives you 3 bodies. And when you're fighting against things like Grixis Energy, Grixis Midrange, Grixis Control, any of the other targeting, single targeted removal heavy decks, Call to the Feast and Queen's Commission are just going to give you 2-for-1s. You're going to get, you know, multiple bodies. Also against like red deck and stuff, it does need to be mentioned that these bodies have lifelink. So not only are you keeping your life total nice and high by using these as chump blockers to get, you know, further into the game till your anthems start kicking in, but they also gain life for you. Even the Call to the Feast vampires, they'll gain life for you to even boost your life total higher than it was. Sometimes it's not even profitable for enemies to even attack in at you. Now, I did talk a little bit about those anthems. Now, Radiant Destiny is a lot like Always Watching, and in this deck we will get to City's Blessing really fast, so the vigilance kicks in quicker than it will in a lot of other decks. I really like Radiant Destiny here, and the 4 of is just an absolute must. Next here, we do have a single copy of Profane Precession in the main board. Well, there's a couple more copies in the sideboard, and we'll talk about that when we get to the sideboard. But Profane Precession is just a really good hedge against all the Phoenix decks. Now, it does slow you down a little bit, as it doesn't do a lot to the board the turn that it enters, but just as a 1-of, it seems to be really good in the main board. And in my testing, I had some pretty good luck with hitting my 1-of in game 1, which was very nice when I just happened to have 5 mana open against a Glorybringer. But you know, that may or may not ever happen again. However, it happened in some testing, and I've become a firm believer of the Profane Precession. I really like this card, and I I bring it in against every Phoenix deck or the Scarab God deck. Also, you know, getting to cast, you know, your opponent's Gaunties and things like that are absolutely phenomenal. Even if you can't, you know, activate like the Scarab God's ability or something, this works great. But if this is tapped, you could use this to activate the Scarab God's ability. However, you know, the moment that I actually cast him, the opponent scoop. So, you know, really good things with this deck. And this card in the deck. So I like having a copy main board, and we do have 2 more copies in the side. Now, also back on the theme of boosting all of your little lifelink vampires, we do have 4 copies of Legion's Lieutenant and 4 copies of Dusk Legion Zealot. Now, Dusk Legion Zealot's not an anthem, but it will draw you cards, and you do lose a little life, but again, we have lifelink, we have a lot of anthems. The idea is to go big and to gain some life here. Go big, go wide, go home. Martyr of Dusk here is another 2-for-1. They have to use exile removal to keep you from actually gaining your token off of this, and the token is really relevant. I mean, when they have to, you know, sync something like you know, a kill spell, a burn-based kill spell, or a fatal push into your 2/1, or heaven forbid you do have a couple anthems out. This guy's quite large, and if you are swinging with a Martyr of Dusk, and that is what they have to block, then you get some really good profit out of that. So if you guys remember Doom Traveler, now this doesn't give you a flying spirit, but a 1/1 vampire with lifelink is pretty good. Now, let's talk about the 1-drops here. Now, 3 copies of Legion's Landing. I've seen lists that were trying to run 4 copies of Legion's Landing, and it seems like you can get choked on these. And even though playing a second one's not always the worst thing in the world, it's also not exactly where you want to be in most games. So 3 copies of Legion's Landing here just seem like the right place to be. And then 2 copies of Fatal Push, because you do need a little bit of targeted removal in the deck. Now, this will give you your instant speed removal, and then we have a couple more pieces of removal to pair along with your profane Precession. And those are 2 copies of Cast Out and 2 copies of Ixalan's Binding. Now, that's going to do it for the main board for this deck. However, the sideboard's got a couple more little goodies in here. Now, the few that I really want to talk about, as I've already really talked about the 2 profane Precessions, and we kind of know where we need to bring this card in, the Scarab God, Hazard, that sort of thing. Anything that you think you're going to have a problem getting rid of, you know, Glory Bringers are absolutely terrific, and of course the Phoenix is great to exile. Lost Legacy, this card is going to be, you know, your hedge against anything else that you're going to have problems answering. Of course, you're going to bring it in against Approach of the Second Sun and, you know, those other combo-esque type decks. Next here we have a Settle the Wreckage, only a single copy. Most of the time we can create such a board state that if the opponent is swinging in, then there's a good chance that they're trying to go for lethal. Also, there's some chances that our opponent will just let us swing in to get a little chip damage, knowing they can kill us on crackback. And against an aggro deck, it's not always common to see the Settle the Wreckage. Now, I have seen some of these lists actually run Dusk till Dawn, as Dusk will get you, or Dawn will get you most of your creatures back from the graveyard. However, there's not a overwhelming number of creatures in the main board, so I really do like Settle here, because most of the time, if your opponent can swing at you, then you're going to be able to get some value out of it, because they're going to have to overextend to get past all your little lifelink guys. Next here we do have one of my favorite cards in this deck. Now it's not really a Planeswalker, but it does a very large number of things for us. For one, it does help us hedge against other opposing Planeswalkers, and 2, it gives us card advantage. Having this on the battlefield, especially when the beginning of the game, we're more than likely going to be putting a very large number of creatures for the opponent to deal with. If they don't have removal left to deal with the Immortal Son, at that point it's going to continue to put cards in our hand to allow us to continue to add to the board. And with most of our cards already creating, you know, 1 to 2 to even 3 extra bodies, then the Immortal Sun's going to be very good for giving us more cards. Not not to say that it's underrated that those spells that we get are going to cost less to cast, and our creatures are going to get an extra Anthem effect. So Immortal Son, terrific card in this deck. Out of all the decks, I definitely think that I really like it here in the Vampires list. Now, we do have 2 more copies of Fatal Push here in case you need some more targeted removal, and then 4 copies of Duress. Against Control, you're going to need all the answers you can get to answer those, like turn 4 Settle the Wreckage. Duress is just 1 mana, and you can, take a look before you ever get into combat to make sure the coast is clear. You know what's in hand. Very good card. Or if they try to stop it, then they may have to tap down below something that you were trying to play around and give you that free swing anyway. So, Duress, 4 copies here. It's kind of just a must. I would not play without 4 copies of Duress in this particular deck, especially when you really want to see it by turn 3 or 4. So, the last card here is going to be Fragmentize. Again, we wanted to keep the converted mana cost really low because you want to be adding to the board while you're trying to play your answers. So, this is our Vampire deck. I'm going to be running a league with this deck. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you do, of course, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so that you know when I go live. I hope you guys enjoy this week. And to end this, I do want to say a special thank you to Andrew G. Happy birthday, sir. I hope you really enjoy the Vampire deck.